I'm trying to live stream the whole thing today, so everybody needs to be on their best behavior. No rolling and barking, Ryan. I actually watched a really funny short video. It's about a minute long on social media this week. Different kinds of worship methods, and it was by this young lady, and she was showing different ways you can praise the Lord, and there was some that were more reserved, and then there were some, one of them I think was called like the surprise attack or something, and everybody just having a good time worshiping, and then all of a sudden, you know, and some of them responded like you responded just now, the surprise attack. Yep. Oh, good stuff. Yep. Good stuff. All right. Well, good. Hey, welcome to Thompson Baptist Church. Thanks for being here. Whether you are a long-time member or a first-time guest, we love you. Glad you're here. Unless Ryan is, or you have a multiple personality. Is one of your personalities the full-time guest today? Oh, okay, good. Today we're going to be, oh man, wasn't Sunday school good? That was cool, man. So today we're going to be in Matthew 5. We're going to finish our series in a series. In computer terms, they call it a system on a chip, an SoC. You have a processor, and then on that chip you have a graphics card and things like that, you know, a graphic processor anyway. This mini-series is kind of like a system on a chip. You have the big thing, our study in Matthew, and then Matthew 5, which is taken as an individual. Matthew 5 through 7 is also kind of its own package. Matthew 5 through 9 is kind of an extended package. 7 through, it's just, Matthew was a genius in how he structured his account of the gospel. He didn't make stuff up, but he crafted his approach to it in such a way that was remarkable. Come on in, Anastasia. All right. Here we go. And she turned right around. Let's be guilt of sin. You forget something, darling? Oh, you making sure the door's closed tight? Not trying to escape. All right, love you. All right, good stuff. She'll be back. She probably forgot her Bible in a notebook or something. So anyways, as you know, Matthew 5 is dealing with really Christ's rejoinder to the Pharisees and their teaching. But he's not chewing out the Pharisees. He's contradicting their teaching that his followers have had their whole lives. So this is the last one in Matthew 5. The title is "The Win is Greater Than the Loss." The win is greater than the loss. And we're going to be talking about that last section this morning. Also, after the meeting this morning, we're going to be gathering over at the parsonage. Yes, you have to. No, you don't have a choice. No, I'm just joking. You're certainly welcome to. We're just going to go have some hamburgers, hot dogs, just enjoy our time together, just celebrate being back together again. And you can check out the new deck. The deck itself is there, but no railings, no ramp. And Brother Ray was so kind to finish that so quickly and so skillfully. I'm so thankful, Brother Ray, for your hard work. It started pouring, and he was out there and be like, "And I will serve you anyways, God." No, it wasn't that, but it might as well have been. My wife was like, "Is he out there?" I'm like, "No, he's going to be fine. He's a grown man. It's going to, but thank you for your hard work, Brother Ray. It's fantastic." And so we're going to take our table. We already have our benches up there, and we're getting a round table up there that Romeo so wonderfully and carefully made us, and we're going to have that as kind of our patio furniture. Oh man, it's going to be so cool. So enjoy it. Kevin and I are going to be drinking the Twinkie flavored coffee. Amen. I'm so much more hesitant about this than I was about the Kopi Luwak coffee that we did together, the one that was passed through. Yeah. This scares me 10 times more. Because I don't know how much actual coffee is in this. I think it's just chemicals, whatever's left from like the nuclear plant, you know what I mean? They just say, let's put it in a K-cup and call it Twinkie. So we're going to do this. My son, I love you, man. All right, so tithe and offering. Thank you for your generosity and your faithfulness to that to which you are committed. There we go. Tithe and offering, we brought in $1,647 last week. Mission fund of $168. That puts us at $1,815. That's a tremendous amount. And you say, great, we can take a break next week. Don't you dare. All right. Good stuff. We are still anticipating a work day here at the church once the COVID stuff blows over. I don't feel comfortable yet doing a work day. We're still trying to maintain a healthy degree of social distancing and things of that nature. So I am planning for sometime in July. We'll be doing something like that. Also, don't forget about the Patterns of Evidence movie. We do have word that it will be a live streaming event like we talked about. So that's going to be here, so stay tuned for the date. All right, any questions or any announcements that I may have forgotten? Okay, just an update for our prayer request from Wednesday. We had the two folks that were really struggling mental health-wise, seem to be doing better. So I'm thankful for that. Anything else? But Steve.
Offering plate come back.
Yes, you're the man, brother. We will not be passing the plate. I wouldn't just bring the tithes into the storehouse. Call me crazy. I do have a bit of a vision for a partition. Just bear with me. I have seen this done before and it works really well. So right when you walk into the sanctuary, there's actually a wall. This is not just to trip up Kim. This is for another purpose. You actually walk in and there's kind of a wall, and then against that wall there's tables. There's going to be, hold on just a second now. There's going to be like an offering box. We can put the bulletins on there. Just a welcoming station for someone to stand at and say, hey, welcome, whatever. And then you would actually go around either side of that little wall and enter into the sanctuary. And that way folks may feel like they can actually come in during the Sunday school hour and not interrupt the service going on. We don't have to close the doors. Just a thought. But either way, I am looking forward to perhaps moving to a offering plate passless. That didn't work.
Yeah.
A model where we don't pass the plate as much as we do just come in and donate to the Lord. The online giving is of course still up, and people are still taking advantage of that. But yes, the offering plate on the kiddie table, right near where we have the prayer room. Adam?
I was gonna say, there are these church supply sites. They
Yeah.
actually have the floor model where you stand the box on the floor.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want me to check. I'll check to see how much they are.
Check and see how much they are. We could build something, we could purchase something, just anything to make it probably a little bit more natural and good and from the heart, just to give and just kind of drop it off as you enter into the Lord's house. It's a great way to do that. Yes.
And I'm sorry, there also was a church I worked at where they had these little boxes in the back next to the door.
Yep, that's what we're discussing there. Yeah, absolutely. Right on track. Absolutely. Kim?
You have somebody sitting there like Matthew.
Yes. And you know, it's funny because we're actually going to be talking about tax collectors today in our lesson. And this actually adds a little bit of context to being slapped across. Who would do that? Tax collectors would do that if you didn't have the money to pay your taxes. They would slap you to dishonor you in front of your peers and in front of the ones soldiers standing nearby. And so that adds some cultural context to that. So, and you could have slapped them back, or you would be in big trouble. But some people still would.
Good job for Ryan.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. All right. So that covers the announcements. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being faithful. Let's stand. Turn to hymn number 44. It's just a chorus. If you know it, great. If you don't, great. We'll learn it together. It's called All Hail King Jesus. All Hail. Short chorus, and I really just think it's a fantastic little thing to sing. It explodes with energy right from the beginning, so that's what we're going to do too. Hymn 44. All Hail King Jesus. I want to make sure my personal microphone is off, or your eardrums will be exploding as well. All right, 44. All right, and again, if you don't know it, no worries. We'll learn it together. Here we go. All hail King Jesus. All hail Emmanuel. King of kings, Lord of lords, bright morning star. And throughout eternity, I'll sing your praise. And I'll reign with him throughout eternity. Isn't that good? Yeah. Let's sing it again. Here we go. All hail King Jesus. All hail Emmanuel. King of kings, Lord of lords, bright morning star. I'll sing your praises, and I'll Isn't that good?
Amen.
It's fun. I love it. I love it. 147. Old one. Well, actually, it's not that old. It sounds much older than it is. It was just in the mid-19th century. Well, I guess that technically makes it pretty old, but yeah, no. This is my father's world.
Oh, what's it?
I can't help but think of, like, you know, St. Patrick frolicking through like 4-leaf clover fields. And so now you're gonna think of it. Don't think of the Lucky Charms guy. That's all I'm saying, right? This is my father's world. Jesus, and this I didn't mean this, but actually now that I think about it, this is the perfect song because Jesus uses natural theology for the first time in Matthew this morning. And he actually forms a theological argument based on what he sees in nature. That's right. He builds theology off of weather patterns. You say, come on, Pastor. No, it's super cool. I almost said dope. Cool word. All right. It's one of those timeless words, right? Timeless, it's okay. All right, 147, let's sing together. This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. On some of those songs here real soon. There's a lot of value to some of these newer songs, and the more I learn, the more I really appreciate them. I regret and repent of being caught in a maelstrom of false thinking that the newer song can't be good. Now, I'll say it, there's plenty of new songs that are shallow, right? But there's probably plenty of old songs that were too.
Well, you figure what we call old songs, once they were new songs.
Right, and that's an important part. Now, I'll say that, and again, just to keep a balanced approach, I think a lot of times as we move forward into what I call Big Eva, right, big evangelicalism, right, the large megachurch movement, there does tend to be a tendency or a slant toward emotional rather than theological. No worries, that does seem to happen a lot. But there are still some really good songs out there. One of the benefits, though, of singing dead people's songs is that you know they finish strong. More and more, when we sing these songs of the faith, it is a little bit more difficult to sing them, knowing that the people who wrote them defected from the faith or such like that. So there is some value in singing these songs, knowing that they were written by people who persevered to the end, that sort of thing. Anyhow, are you trying to make a statement about eternal security? No, I'm not. I'm just talking about people who, you know, said I'm no longer a Christian. And I have a hard time singing their songs without feeling some sort of grief there. So. All right, So, yes, that's our song. We're done with the song part. And the offering, again, we're not going to pass the plate or anything like that. Really quick review. On Wednesday, the title was Gutter Guards and Guardrails. Gutter Guards and Guardrails. When you first start bowling, we benefit from gutter guards, right? Yeah. They never had those when I was growing up, by the way. If they did, I was not privileged enough to know about them. You know what I mean? Brother Ralph shaking his head. You know, they had these rocks and sticks. They were just inventing bowling, all right?
Being on alley two and get the strikes on alley one?
What's that?
Is it being on alley two with the strikes on alley one?
Exactly right. Yes. Yeah. When you're on alley 2 and the strikes are in alley 1, that's my lane too. Yeah, exactly right. No, but and by the way, candlepin bowling, anathema, anathema. May it never be so. Real bowling, right? So let's not play around with candlepin stuff. That's compromise. And okay. That's my funny way of saying I'm terrible at candlepin bowling. I'd like to be better at it. For those of you who are not aware what candlepin bowling is, it's a much smaller bowling ball.
Little ball, they call it.
What's that?
They call it playing little ball.
Little ball. Yeah, it reminds me more of bocce than bowling. You know what I mean? You got like this little tiny. Yeah. Anyways, that's not resonating with everybody because you're like, what's he talking? I don't know. Okay, so let's move on. But learning how to bowl, sometimes we need gutter guards. Learning how to drive, we're thankful for guardrails. My brother once was taking the off ramp on the way to Baldwinsville Christian Academy. It was his first year driving. We were in a 1998 Toyota Celica. If you've never seen a 1998 Toyota Celica, I mean, it's auburn. And it's just a hot red, sporty, it's the sportiest looking Toyota you've seen since the Supra. And of course, it's the same year as the 98 Supra, doesn't matter. Okay, it's a good, beautiful red car. And he's going on the off-ramp, and we're just going, and it was central New York, so tons of snow, right? In Rochester, we understand how that is. Central New York, turning to the right, and just before you know it, losing a little bit of control, beautiful Celica, bang, into the guardrail. And both of us, it wasn't like a yelling, we knew we were fine, it was just a grieving grumble. Just awful. Oh, it was terrible. And of course he got it fixed. But we're thankful for those guardrails, right? He was an inexperienced driver and would have maybe gone to the other lane if it weren't the guardrail. The law, the Torah laws, served as guardrails and gutter guards. That's the purpose. They weren't meant to transform the heart, to teach us how to drive, to teach us how to bowl. They were to keep us out of trouble. And that's biblical. It's not Michael Britt theology. So I'm not going to do a full review. We're going to move right through it. But there are three ways that people deal with sin and the law, etc. In modern evangelicalism, in modern Christianity. One, you can condemn it. It is bad. But that's just doing Torah stuff. You're not actually transforming the heart. You're just condemning bad things, right?
Yes.
Two, you can accommodate it. Well, it's bad, but we live in the 21st century, you know. It's bound to happen. And we don't take Jesus' word seriously that we're not created to sin. Right? So there's two extremes. The real balance is transformation. So you see condemnation, accommodation, the balance is transformation. We become more like Jesus as we learn from him and his word. Make sense? So that's just a little bit of a review from Wednesday. I think I covered everything. Did I cover everything? I just really want to get to preaching. Cool. All right. Matthew chapter 5, if you would, please. Okay. I didn't warn Toby in advance, but Toby, would you read our text today? All right, there you are. Yeah, it's Matthew 5, verses 43 through 48. So 43 to the end of the chapter. Would you read those good aloud for us? What's that? Why don't you come up here and use the microphone? You should. Yeah. You look good, man. Better than me. Look at that 30-day challenge everybody's talking about. You ain't gonna roll this one. Let's hope it was your wife.
You never know.
You never know.
So 43, you said?
Yeah, 43 through the end of the chapter.
You've heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, be good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same. And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect.
Thank you for that reading. What a text.
Yeah.
Ending with a really high state. We'll get to that word perfect in like 45 minutes, but just stay tuned. I'm going to pray and then we'll jump into it. Father, I love you. Please help me as I try to speak truth, your truth, the only truth, the objective, unchanging truth. And what you set up is just awesome. You really are one of a kind. And your Son, Jesus Christ, the human among human, the most human of us all. Yeah. Man. The first fruit. Well, Lord, I'm just asking for your help in whatever way you see fit. Whatever you see that needs to be done between me and the church, everything like that, Lord, I'm just asking you to do it in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. All right, so last week we covered I had a title, Lex Schmelionis, just for purposes of publication, because I'm going to turn this into a thing. I changed it to the rejection of retaliation. It works. The rejection of retaliation. I will not change my two that were titled after the Princess Bride. What?
Is that on?
Video camera. Are you streaming?
Oh, it's on. I've been streaming the whole time. So I got all you singing. My microphone on, so I'm very thankful. You're like, Patrick, you don't need a microphone. It's cool. All right. So last week we covered the rejection of retaliation, which was one of Jesus' most radical teachings. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Turn the other cheek, resist not evil. If someone unjustly sues you, give them extra. If someone forces you into manual labor, violating your rights as an individual, give them extra labor? This doesn't really jive with any mindset being offered out there by the world, does it? In fact, it makes me feel like a Tibolian. From Doctor Who. Don't worry, I have every intention of explaining what a Tibolian is. The Tibolians were an alien race in the British show Doctor Who, and they were characterized by their cowardice and eagerness to be overthrown by the next strongest interplanetary conqueror. Yes, I did my research on this. Quote from TARDIS.fam. The Tibolians were a who had grown so used to being conquered and occupied by other races that it had become a way of life just to accept it. They never defended themselves and did everything they could to make their conquerors as comfortable as possible. The Tibolians. And if you see this race, they look like rabbits on purpose, right? You know, just little helpless, tender rabbits.
Right.
Well, I don't want to be a Tibolian. I don't want to go down in history as somebody who just said, oh no, please, by all means. Well, thankfully, we're going to learn in this passage that I call doormat theology. He's not teaching us to be merely doormats, although when the world sees us, what we're doing, they might accuse us of being doormats, but it's not that. So here's the good news. Following Jesus doesn't mean turning into a Tibolian. It means deferring anger and revenge for the greater good. Now, we learned about this last week. Where many might look at a Christian and call him or her a coward, like Jesus said would happen, yes?
Yes.
We know that rather than being weak, we're being deliberately meek. We're setting retaliation to accomplish a divine purpose. Why? Because here's the key. This is what I want you to remember from the beginning, just like Pastor Kevin did this morning. Right? At the very beginning, he introduced us to a concept and then brought it back at the end. I'm going to try to do that. Just one sentence for you to remember. Healthy, loving relationships is the highest standard of kingdom ethics. Healthy, loving relationships is the highest standard of kingdom ethics. You say, come on, it obviously has to come down to something a little bit more profound than that. No, because literally Jesus said, greatest commandment, love God and love your neighbor. Yeah. And then the question, who is my neighbor? Well, actually, Jesus answered that very, very clearly in the text we have before us today. Now, I'm bound to add add that this doesn't necessarily mean that we as a nation don't protect ourselves or others. The nation of Israel certainly was no doormat, right? God had promised them land, they went and took it, they defended themselves, they still defend themselves. This is not within the spectrum of what Jesus is discussing. Who was Jesus' audience? 5-star generals? No. Jesus' audience was people like you and me as they dealt with individual, localized oppression in their own daily lives. At the hands of tax thieves, Roman guards, you understand my point? This is about whom he was speaking. And so he was introducing individuals into a collective new way of thinking, the way of the kingdom of heaven. And as followers of Jesus, we have a responsibility to take the loss for the greater win, because the win is greater than the loss. So, with all of this in mind, Jesus continues this line of thinking. We made it to the introduction in like 5 minutes. I'm really happy. All right. We doing okay this morning? Everybody in? We good? All right. Grab coffee, grab pretzels, whatever you got to do. We're going to be good. I can't eat in church. I don't know who made that up. It's not a thing here. All right. So with all this in mind, Jesus continues that line of thinking as we move into the final section of Matthew 5. This is a passage of Scripture that has changed my life, and I hope it's doing the same for you. So let's hear Jesus in these verses. Now, we just heard it read, so I'm not going to read this again to you, but it's fresh in our minds. I'll read the last few words. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Question. Have you ever seen something so magnificent that you'll never forget what it looked like? For me, it was the chimney pond at the foot of Katahdin. You ever climbed Katahdin? Anybody climbed Katahdin before? Humble brag. I've done it. Took me all day. You know what I mean? It was pretty rough. I had to stop a couple
Doesn't
times.
count in a Jeep.
What's it? No, yeah, not in a Jeep. That doesn't count.
Can't count.
I did, and I had to stop. Not for too long, just about 5 minutes, a couple times. But it really, honestly, if you take the right trail, it's not that daunting. It's just gotta have a lot of water or whatever with you. Roberto carried me the whole time. I'll just say it. All right? No, I'm just kidding. Chimney Pond. When I saw Chimney Pond, it's not. I'm telling you, you've heard people say this about the Grand Canyon. I'm sure I'd say the exact same thing if I ever saw it. Saw it, not saw it. I'm from away. I saw it in person, and it was just. I was overwhelmed with the feeling of why don't more people talk about this place? It's beautiful. It's this pond, but then you look up and it's like heaven. I felt like John was describing the throne of God. It was absolutely incredible. And the best part was, it was this rainbow. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I could have had somebody standing next to me telling me all the facts about it, but I wouldn't have heard them because I would be so engrossed by this towering monument, Chimney Pond. That makes sense?
Yes.
Anybody have an example like that of something that you... Toby would say his wife. All right, let's just get that out of the way. I read your mind. In my notes, I have written down my wife. I don't remember a whole lot of what happened that day. When my wife walked into Arby's, I was in high school. I was working at Arby's. It's all good. She was in college. I was in high school. And she walked in, and I had seen pictures of her before, but when in person, oh man, I don't remember clocking out, clocking in. I don't know how many roast beefs I sold that day. All I could think of was seeing my wife for the first time. Beautiful. Adam?
For me, it was the Badlands of South Dakota or Montana.
The Badlands of South Dakota or Montana. Yeah, anybody else? Brother Ray. Amen, man. That's the right answer. Anybody else looking to get that in, this is your opportunity. Yes, ma'am.
The thing as a nurse
Yes.
that I loved and were the hopeless patients that the doctors said were hopeless.
Ooh, yes.
I like to watch them walk out of the hospital.
Amen. It's beautiful. Yeah, so we have these things in our mind that we can remember and say that no matter what could have been the case besides that one thing sticks out in our mind. As Jesus is teaching, there is a reason he is ending this particular set of discourses with this one. Because this is supposed to be the culmination of everything Jesus has been teaching about. He's saying, how do you mean? I'm glad you asked. I gotta catch up with my notes here. You may not remember a lot of what you read in the Bible, and you may not even remember many of Jesus' words. In fact, what Jesus' words we have in the Bible is just a fraction of all that he said and did.
Right.
We don't know a lot of what Jesus said and did, but there's a reason we have this passage in front of us today. This is supposed to be for us a Kilimanjaro, an Everest, a Grand Canyon, you see? This is supposed to be for us that moment that we look and we see Jesus' wisdom towering over us, and we're supposed to say, there is nothing like it. But if we just skim through it, because it takes 5 minutes to read Matthew 5, but we've been here for a month and a half.
Right.
Because it's okay and good and right and commanded to meditate on the words of Jesus. When the Word speaks words, we should listen.
Amen.
So here's the scene. This is why this is a Kilimanjaro. Here's the scene. Jesus just got done quoting from the Torah and tells people that under the Old Testament law, they all had a right to retaliation. This is last week, remember? He just got done telling people, in the Old Testament law, it established a right to retaliation. When the tax collector slaps you, no wonder they weren't too well liked, right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't catch enough fish to pay your taxes, you don't fight back. When you're enjoying a beautiful day with your family under the sun of Judea, and maybe you're right by the shores of Galilee, you finally have a day off, and you can see there's not a cloud in the sky, maybe somebody else is flying a kite or whatever, you know? And then this Roman soldier comes up to you and says, hey, carry my stuff. Man, come on, can you see it with me?
Right.
But again, Jesus isn't teaching doormat theology. Jesus is teaching you to find the level of compassion, love, and forgiveness whereby we can say, I love you enough to not strike back. In other words, if Jesus were to say, when somebody hits you, you don't hit back, what's he doing? He's just setting up more Torah laws. But if you look at the reason for that, Jesus is saying when somebody hits you, if you truly love your neighbor, you will not hit back. In fact, you'll say, seems like you're having a hard day. Do you need to hit me again? You say, come on, that's ridiculous. No. Can you think of it this way? Hey, you sued me for my shirt. You must be really struggling. Can I give you my cloak as well? You get the idea?
Yes.
Hey, you made me carry your gear a mile. You must be tired. Can I help you more? If I were a Roman soldier, as brutal as I would be, if somebody said, you know what, my family's back there on the shore of Galilee a mile away. They're waiting for me to come back. They don't know if I'm okay or not. Because the Roman soldier could break your knees at a whim if they wanted to. You see? You didn't do it right, break your knees. So I'm at the end of the mile and the Roman soldier says, well, this is all the law allows me to do. And you say, I'm good, I can keep going. I'm good, I can keep going. You don't do that out of anything except love. Like real love. Love is a very unhelpful word today, by the way, just so you know. What do you mean? I mean, there's a sitcom coming out. If it's not already come out, I don't know. Don't want to know about it. Don't want to hear about it. Where, listen close. This is true. Where a woman, and I guess over 20 other contestants, if you've heard it, stop me. And over 20 other contestants are competing to impregnate this woman on reality TV. I forgot the title of it. It's like The Bachelor without the romance. You're just trying to impregnate this woman who said, hey, I've always wanted a kid. Do you understand how devaluing and degrading that is to the human condition?
Yes.
But our idea of love has been so weakened and diluted that it's not even a necessity before a physical relationship. Because love is nothing to us anymore. Love is just a feeling. Love is just something. But listen, Jesus is not trying to teach us in this upcoming text and the text we covered last week, because last week and this week kind of go together, so you got to bear with me. Jesus has not been trying to teach us to just, well, I don't like this person, but my job as a Christian is to manufacture feelings that are fuzzy and warm towards this person. Hey, newsflash, that's never going to happen.
Right.
Somebody punching me across the face, it is not my responsibility to say, well, I don't feel this way, but I'm going to fake it till I make it. Jesus would never ask you to do that. Because love is not how we feel.
Right.
Love is how we act.
Amen.
And so when someone slaps you across the face and dishonors you, you don't fight back. You offer the other cheek. When someone sues you, you offer them more. When someone forces you into labor, you say, can I go an extra mile with you? Why? Not because we feel warmly toward that person. I know I wouldn't. But I would have compassion on that person and love that person and say, can I go another mile with you? Saints, this, hi Hi, Ralph from the Dalton Baptist Church, going around passing out gospel tracts. Can I leave them with you, please? Yeah. Hey, do you know for sure if you die today, you go to heaven? There's like 50 things wrong with that. I'm not saying door-to-door evangelism is wrong, but we've just twisted it. You know the real kind of evangelism that Jesus was trying to say is not just preach the gospel and when necessary use words. No, it's this beautiful balance of people actually seeing a difference in you that transcends the general goodness of the human population.
Amen.
Because it is very popular, especially in our denominational circles, to say, well, we're all wretched. Actually, Jesus goes so far as to say people are basically good as long as they're within their circles. We're all really nice to each other. The minute you get out of that neighbor zone, that's when we get a little iffy.
Right.
Need proof? Look around.
Yeah.
All right? Sure. We form camps. We form ideologies. We form loyalties. But Jesus is trying to say, step out of that. Anyway, so far, now we're going to get into the text. Review is pretty much done. Thank you for your attention. So far in the text, Jesus has been saying, you've heard that it's been said, you've read this in the law, you've heard that it's been said. Now Jesus goes to Leviticus chapter 19. You don't have to go there, but you may want to. We're going to be there for just a second. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15. This is the passage that Jesus is quoting, and I want you to see if you can tell me what's missing from this. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. But in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord. I am Yahweh. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. Anybody pick up on a common theme from that passage? You can tell me. We're open. Open for business. I emphasized them on purpose. Somebody's got to say it. No word, Pastor Kevin?
A lot of thou shouts.
Yeah, a lot of thou shouts, for sure. There's a lot of commands in Leviticus. Anyone else? Any other?
I am the Lord.
That's there as well.
It seems to apply only to those that you consider your neighbor.
Neighbor?
I looking for, there's no reference to the rest of the world, just your people.
Is the what? I didn't
There's no reference to the rest of the world, just your people.
Right. I think that's the emphasis that I was focusing on, though the others are for sure there. But he says, don't do unrighteousness, thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, no honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. And then in the next verse, thy people, thy neighbor. And in the next verse, thy neighbor. And in the next verse, against the children of thy people and thy neighbor. These are specifically ordained for the children of Israel, right?
Yes.
And Jesus is actually talking about how to act within your tribe. Now, we are really good about forming inverse theology. We take what the Bible says and we hold that as true, but then if the Bible is silent about something, sometimes we make something out of that. Here's what I mean. Well, Jesus said it best. You've heard that it has been said, and you don't have to turn back there, I'm just going to go so I can quote it just right. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Does Leviticus chapter 19, verses 15 through 18, address hating your enemy? No. But people form that theology because they said, well, we're told to love and respect our people. Make sense?
Yes.
So the argument from silence is, since we're told to love and treat fairly our people, that means that the people outside of our people don't have to be treated with such a way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's what Jesus is standing and correcting. He said, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Because the Pharisees and the scribes, they took Leviticus chapter 19 and they tore it to shreds, just like they did with Deuteronomy 24. They would make up their own rules based on what wasn't said. And Jesus is trying to say, look, if I made a law to cover every single thing, the Bible would never end.
That's right.
Because there's no end to our ability to find loopholes in the law.
Right.
And so this idea of hating your neighbor was never prescribed in the Bible, but it was taught as though it was the Bible because people found loopholes in the law.
Right.
So Jesus is correcting the way that this verse has been abused and mishandled. The teachers of the law had been tragically forming this inverse principle. And so Jesus came to correct that by asking a question that would later be asked of him. What's the question? Who is my neighbor?
Right.
Who is my neighbor? Because if we don't have two categories of neighbor and enemy, then we're left with just one category of neighbor. That means there's no one left to hate. So the question is, who is my neighbor? Well, let's keep going. We're making our way through this. I hope y'all are taking it in. You could be daydreaming about food, and that's totally cool. I do that a lot, but try your best. Hang in there. Look at, if you're in Leviticus 19 still, look at just 2 verses in there with me. Look at verse 33. And if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him. In other words, treat him right. Ooh, all right. Immigration should be done correctly. You ought to get your green card. You ought to do things right. Okay? Amen? Yes?
Yep.
But look what the Bible says. If a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, you shall not vex him, but the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. I am not trying to say, well, you know what? Illegal immigration, no, that can really hurt our economy. We should have a way of doing things, sure. But there is no excuse to hate people who are not like us, because when they come to sojourn with us, they're automatically our neighbor. So look at what Jesus is doing. Right in verses 33 through 34, God is already setting up a case that says, they may not be of your tribe, but you know what? If they come in and dwell with you, guess what's happening? They're your neighbor now.
Right.
What did the Romans do to Judea, by the way? Well, they just kind of came in, didn't they? And dwelled with them, didn't they? They would even set up their own things, and they would actually commit abominations in the land. But you know what? Leviticus 19 didn't allow for the loophole that the rabbis and teachers were teaching, that you can just all of a sudden hate your neighbor because they weren't like you, or they did things that you didn't like.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So, this is where it gets really cool. I love this part. I love it so much. I hope this blows you away. So who are we told to love in this text? Not just Israelites, but also immigrants. People who defected from their own tribes or somehow stumbled into community acceptance with the Israelite people were to be loved as oneself. So how did this include Roman soldiers and tax collectors, people who were going to break your knees if you didn't walk a mile from them, people who robbed you and shamed you? How are these people your neighbors? And this is what the burning question was of the time. People were always asking themselves, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? They weren't asking so that they had permission to love more. They were asking so that they had permission to hate. They weren't interested in saying, who's my neighbor? So that they could say, I just really want to know who I can love the most. They were saying, who is my neighbor? So that they could justify themselves withholding godly love from people.
Right.
It was not a question of innocence. It was a question of excusing sin. We do it all the time, by the way.
Yes.
Well, we got a rule in our home, no PG-13s. Okay, cool. We got a rule in our home, no R's. Okay, that's fine. Do those static standards always work? Sometimes I dislike rated movies even more than I dislike the messages portrayed in R-rated movies. You say, I don't watch Passion of the Christ. That's cool. I genuinely respect it. I haven't seen it since high school, but I did watch Passion, and it was rated R, and I like the message of that one a whole lot more than I like the message of some of these other movies that are coming out for kids.
Right.
So my whole point is that we very easily and quickly erect these standards that sound really good to us because we're not trying to say, how close can I get to honoring God and the beauty of His Shekinah glory and holiness? We say, what can I get away with? That's the reason for a lot of these rules. I do when I'm driving. What's the speed limit, 25? 25 it is. What's the speed limit, 35? 35 it is. I'm not saying that's sinful. I'm not. But my point is that I get right up to the edge of what I'm allowed to do. We all do. Right? Nobody wants to? Okay. I did the speed limit thing. I should know this by now. When I mentioned the speed limit, I was like, hey. All right. I'll mention something else, okay? I don't know. That's just my perfect example because it works so well for me. You're not allowed to keep more than 12 chickens in the town of Topsom. I don't know. That's something I just made off the top of my head. How many am I going to have? I'm going to have 12. And the eggs don't count because we're going to eat them. You know what I mean? We always get to the math. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. But that is pretty much the picture Oh, here's an illustration you all will undoubtedly connect with. That's a lie, you won't. There's a video game I used to play on my computer. I say used to, I mean 2 days ago. It's called Roller Coaster Tycoon. You know what I'm talking about? It is the greatest video game ever made. It really is. I love it so much. I have this rig that can run AAA games at like 4K, 120 frames per second. I want Roller Coaster Tycoon. Yeah, I love it. And whenever I build a station platform for my rides, I make them as long as humanly possible. Why? More money. More money. Because I can fit more cars on that roller coaster if I have a longer station train. Come on, station platform. Come on now. It just makes sense.
I did not know that was how.
Yeah. He's liking it with me. He's liking it with me. And if I built a tiny station platform, there was one time in my park, it would have made a lot more sense to build a small station platform. I chose to raise down the trees. I chose to buy extra property because I wanted the longest station platform I could get. Yeah, because why wouldn't we max it out? Maxing it out is kind of how we do it. We like to supersize it as a society. Again, nothing wrong with wanting to take advantage of the most possible, but look at our society, we're bent toward the max. And so when they would ask themselves, who is my neighbor? They're saying, how big can I build a station platform? What are my restrictions? How much can I get away with?
Right.
So, Jesus says, the love commanded in Leviticus 19 is actually a love without boundaries. Even though to the Jews, they looked at that and clearly saw boundaries. So how did Jesus shake it up and turn it upside down? Here's the 2 ways. Here's the 2 ways. The first one, the weather. The weather. Look at what Jesus says. We can get out of Leviticus now if you're still there. Look at what Jesus says. He says, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them that despitefully use you, persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. Really quick on that. Ye may be the children of your Father is not speaking about a transition into a state of salvation. There is a Jewish idiom that if you were the son of something, it means that that characterized you. Does that make sense?
Amen.
John 8:44, Jesus looked at people and he said, you're of your father the devil. Did he really think that the devil gave birth to them? Did he really think that the devil adopted them? No. He was characterizing them with the same actions as the devil. Does that make sense?
Right.
So Jesus is saying that you can be the children of your Father. He's not saying, well, you can finally be adopted, bless God. No, he's saying that your life will be able to reflect Him. Does that make sense?
That's right.
Okay, moving right along. So he says that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he, by the way, that is a Jewish idiom. We don't say things like that anymore, but that was very easily and commonly understood by his audience. All right? So look at what he says. For he makes the sun, he maketh his son, I love that, man, that's dope. That's not even in my notes, I just thought it was really, really cool. He maketh his son. The son belongs to God, I love it. He maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. Wow. Alright, so picture this. I'm driving through Judea, in my car, my Honda Accord, right? I'm driving through Judea. Here we go. And it's raining. The spring rain's coming down. Crops are growing. Farmers are out there dancing so happy together. You know what I mean? Come on, picture it, right? And you're in this utopia. And everybody, and the farmers, you're playing a song on the radio. You know what I mean? And the farmers are like hoeing to the beat of your song. You know what I mean? You get the idea? 2 of you do, and the rest of you think I'm insane. It's just a picture I'm painting in my head, and it just, everything is perfect. But then, you cross the town line into a land that's not obeying God. And all of a sudden, the rain stops, and you hear like howling in the distance. And it gets dark, and tumbleweeds are crossing the road. You get the idea? Does that happen in real life?
No.
No. If anybody says yes, man, I need you to tell me where you live so we can move you out of there. You know? That's weird stuff! Okay. In real life, it doesn't work that way. In real life, the sun shines over the whole earth. Right. On countries that honor God, the sun shines. On communist China, in Tiananmen Square, the sun shines. That makes sense? Right. In the United States of America, as they signed the Declaration of Independence, and John Hancock does his very best, you get the idea? The sun shines. And then in communist Russia, the USSR, in Hitler's Germany, the rain falls and the sun shines. You get the idea? God does not withhold the weather from those who do wrong. This is the picture of God's grace. One could almost say that God is blessing his enemies. Because it is not just those who say, I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice, and then all of a sudden the rain comes down. You ever heard of like a rain dance? Yeah, Native American tribes would do these rain dances, and other cultures, of course, as well, and they would offer people in volcanoes to hopefully get the weather to go just right. But God sends the weather on everybody. You don't have to do anything special to receive the general goodness of God. That's Jesus' point. If you look at the sun, he causes his sun, it rises on the just and the unjust. The rain of the harvest falls down upon the evil and the good. Well, the weather. Jesus is about to overthrow a common restriction placed on a Torah law based on observations of the weather. Here's something to take away from this point. You ready? God's economy does not restrict his present bountiful generosity to those who behave in a certain way. God's economy does not restrict his present bountiful generosity to those who behave in a certain way. Now, is there special favor shown to those who do good? Sure, yes. But what God is talking about is Jesus is saying, God does not withhold the sunshine and the rain from people because they aren't behaving right, because they're not part of his circle. The Israelites, you get the idea? God displays goodness to everyone, even those who mock his name.
Right.
I don't remember who it was. I want to say it was Ernest Hemingway, but I can't be right. Who mocked God to the end and said, well, this is how God fails, because the just go down to the grave just as blessed as the unjust. And the unjust die just as rich as the just, if not richer. God is a failure. But that's not the promise of God. Nowhere in the Bible do you read that God's theology is anywhere like that. In fact, God's promise is that he's going to be just as good to everybody here on earth. It is only after the resurrection that we receive the reckoning.
Right.
You get the idea? So, somebody said this, when I was talking about peacemaking and being a Christian, a peaceful Christian who wants to avoid strife and suffering. Somebody said this, well, my God's coming back on a white horse. Doesn't sound very peaceful to me. Oh, my dude. My dude. Who owns the earth?
Yes.
Who's the one who carries the sword when he comes back?
Christ.
Who's the one who's actually been offended?
Right.
Who has the right as the reigning monarch to execute judgment?
Right.
Who are we? We're just his servants and his followers. And by the way, even if we do end up fighting alongside Jesus, which every dispensationalist wants to have, I want to swing a sword and get that guy who said a mean thing to me at work! All right. Thank you, Greg, I love you. You have earned my favor. No, me too. If we, let's just say we all get to swing a sword later, is that what we're supposed to do now? No. We're supposed to send the rain and the sunshine on people who are even outside of our circles, who hate our guts. Why? Because that's what God does.
Amen.
And by the way, here's this. Are you ready? This is the big point for today. If we choose to withhold goodness from our enemies, we are saying that we are wiser, smarter, and above God.
Yes.
We're saying that we've got a better idea than God does.
That's right.
Because God chooses to give rain and sunshine, and all we've got to do is give a friendly handshake and say, I love you, or walk an extra mile. When it comes down to that kind of comparison, it seems that walking an extra mile isn't quite as hard as we might think, because you are not in charge of the sun, and you are not in charge of the rain. And the one who is chooses to be bountiful with his grace. By the way, do we deserve grace?
No.
No,
Do we deserve sunshine and rain?
no.
And the Jews had fallen into this way of thinking that said, when the kingdom comes, I surely will be first in line. Why? Because they're convinced that they deserve the blessing of God because they were born into the Jewish nation.
Yeah.
But in reality, the Jews were just as condemned as the Gentiles. Big Romans, man.
Right.
In fact, they were even, more condemned.
Right.
Because they had the law, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they would say, we deserve the rain and the sunshine. And the reality was, they deserved it even less.
Right.
So when they were withholding good from their enemies, they had no idea that they were actually last on the list to receive the rain and the sunshine. But they got it anyways.
That's right.
Can you believe it? Heavy stuff, man. All right, so what's the second thing? I told you Jesus uses two things.
Right.
He uses the weather patterns to turn this upside down on its head. And the second thing he uses is something that Jesus was very clearly saturated in. The Psalm. Turn to Psalm 145. Psalm 145. Pastor, we've been sitting here for like 45 minutes. I know. You're awesome. You're doing great. I love you. Thank you. You're the best. Psalm 145. I hope this changes us. Look at verse 8. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. The Lord is good to some, and the Lord is good to all. And his tender mercies are over all his works or creations or people or denizens. Look at verse 15. The eyes of all wait upon thee, and thou givest them their meat in due season. All receive their meat in due season. Thou openest thine hand and satisfies the desire of every living thing.
Amen.
You see that? Jesus knew from reading the Psalms, as a human, right? Understand that? Jesus knew that God was not a God who withheld blessing from people that were mean to him. God was a God who gave blessing to everybody, regardless of whether they were mean to him or not. Almost like the scriptures say somewhere that God is no...
Respecter of persons.
I knew it was in there somewhere. Come on, saints. God is specifically saying, through his son Jesus, that he does not play favorites, that he is good to everyone. You see, because Jesus had a God-saturated view of the world. And when he looked at the world through the eyes of those who had penned the Holy Scriptures. And he saw through the eyes of David. And he saw, what is man that thou art mindful of him? The planets are not just there for good people to observe. The planets are there to reveal the glory of God for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
This is the same mentality that caused Jesus to invite tax collectors and prostitutes to his love feast. Get the idea? This is the, oh man. Ryan and I were having a conversation months ago, and we were talking about a young lady who pointed out, or in her life, pointed out the inconsistency of Christians and unbelievers. Is Christians sometimes tend to be the worst at making fun of people in Walmart, and making fun of bad drivers. Hey, you say, oh man, that's not... No. The Pharisees did it too. They were the ones who had the law the longest, and they had taken advantage of it. They had it, they abused it, and they used it to look down on people. Well, those people at Walmart showing up in their flannel pajamas and t-shirts with holes in it, with Tweety Bird on it. I've seen, trust me, man, I've seen it. And no, I wouldn't dress that way in Walmart. Why? Because I have the grace of God and the privilege of knowing something. And you know what? It's not a sin to wear flannel pajama pants and a Tweety Bird to Walmart. Maybe they didn't have the blessings afforded to them that I have. To say, hey, this is how you present yourself. And maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe they're in an emergency when their kid is suffering from a headache. They just needed to run out to the store and grab some children's Tylenol. Come on, saints. You say, why do you bring that up? Because Christians, man, we're rough on people. And we take the sunshine and we take the rain and we say, no. This is for people in my circle that I smile upon. You see, come on, saints. If they're outside of our circle, well, we tend to be pretty rough. Yeah. But Jesus, listen, I'm almost done, believe it or not. Ish. But Jesus is where we land the plane, where we reached our cruising altitude a while ago, and now we're beginning our descent, put the tray tables up, we're doing okay. But Jesus invited tax collectors and prostitutes. This is the same mentality, by the way, that caused Jesus to not destroy those who opposed him. It's the same kind of love that drove Jesus to the cross, where he said, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. I think this is my last bold statement. Yeah, it is. This is my last bolded statement of the lesson. So listen, please, best you can. We do not have the right or authority to treat someone with anything less than agape love, since our King chose long ago to treat our enemies with agape love.
It's good.
Agape is love is a very unhelpful word. I mentioned that. You say, boy, it'd be nice if somebody could just make up different words for the different kinds of love. Someone did. It was Greek, right? That's why I like the word agape, because it's that love that acts. It's not just a love that feels, okay? All right. Jesus, here's the end of the passage. Jesus finishes this out. He says, if you love them which love you, what reward do you have? Don't even publicans do the same? Tax collectors have their own circles, and they love people in those circles. Get the idea?
Amen.
You with me? Then he says, if you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Tax collectors do that. Unbelievers, pagans, they all do that. They have their own circle. So if you're in church and you say, "Hail, peace be upon you, Shalom, may God go with you and bless you and give thee light and give thee peace, and may the wind of Yahweh be at your back as you go through the..." Oh, that sounds great. But even the pagans do that. Not exactly that way, right? Come on, don't they? Even the pagan, by the way, it's not a bad word. It just means the non-Jew, okay? Heathen, pagan. Even those who have rejected the gospel are still very kind and sweet to those in their circles, their neighbors. By the way, in case you haven't picked it up by now, the word neighbor is essentially those who you choose to be in your circle, or those who you perceive are in your circle. So, everything culminates in verse 48, the last verse. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Now please understand that the word perfect, 400 years removed from our translation, is not as helpful today, all right? Pastor, are you correcting my King James? Oh, just calm down, wipe the foam from the mouth, all right? We're going to be okay. The word perfect means mature or complete.
Yes.
Agree, Pastor Kevin? All right.
Yes.
The word perfect means mature or complete. This is what Jesus is saying. He is saying that when we treat our enemies the same way that we treat our closest friends, when we give the sunshine and the rain not just to those in our circle, but those outside of our circles as well, that we are being more completely like God than any other time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That perfect, that's a maturity, that's a completion that Jesus says, if you want to be well-rounded, if you want to look like God your Father, if you want to do that, you're not going to accomplish it by following these Torah laws to the letter. You're going to accomplish it by breaking free of the restrictions and restraints and loving people, everyone, as though they were your neighbor.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to that keystone at the very beginning. You ready? Right relationships are the keystone of the kingdom ethics. Right relationship with God, right relationship with people. And ladies and gentlemen, it is so far past time that we think of those two things as being somehow different from each other. They are intertwined like a warp and a woof of a picture, of a painting on a canvas, on a quilt. Listen, you cannot have a right relationship with others if you don't have a right relationship with God. And you cannot have a right relationship with God if you do not have a right relationship with others. Prove it. If you don't forgive others, God will not forgive you. How's that for a start? Well, Jesus actually meant... No, stop telling Jesus what he meant and let Jesus do the talking.
Amen.
Yeah, that's what he meant.
Yep. All right, how about this? Choosing to view someone as a human being with dignity and love, regardless of what they've done, is the heartbeat of God.
Yes.
Expanding our circle is godly. Treating others kindly, including those government officials that we disagree with. Is godly. Those rioters and looters, don't they know that I was going to go to Target? I get it, man, and what they're doing, it ain't right. I get it. Number one, take a balanced approach. Know that there's probably more to the story than we think. And number two, no matter what they've done to you or others, stop withholding the sunshine and the rain. You are not God, and God chooses to not withhold the sunshine and the rain. So if you choose to withhold the sunshine and the rain, you're thinking that you're smarter than God. You understand my point?
Yeah.
That was Jesus' point. He drew from natural theology to say the way you're thinking about Leviticus 19 is incorrect. So I'm going to close with this, finally. Did a good job today, church. You did. That's why this last passage in Matthew 5 is like the Grand Canyon of the kingdom ethics. Because it all culminates in honoring God, helping people. Loving God, loving people. The Father has been doing this since the beginning of his humanity. So that's why John wrote this little poem. Beloved, let's love one another. For love is of God, and everyone that loves knows God, Because God is love. You get it? Did that make sense? More of John's little poem there? We've heard the song, we love you, let us love one another. You get the idea? John was profoundly saying that if we don't have this love that doesn't withhold sunshine and rain, if we don't have this love that doesn't have a tight circle but instead expands circle to all of humanity and the express image bearers of God, if we don't have that kind of love, we don't know God. Because God is love. And the more you know God, the more His love will flow through you as a human to other humans.
Amen.
You were created to be a channel of God. What it means to be created in His image. So I'm going to end with a quote from, and you're going to have to believe me, because I'm going to let my yays be yays, and I'm not going to swear up and down. You're going to have to believe me that I did not pick this quote because of the time. This quote was in one of the teachings the teaching I consulted about this lesson. This quote was already there, and I said, that's a perfect quote for this. I'm going to share it with my church. And it's from Martin Luther King Jr. And all I want to do is just put it on a giant billboard and put it everywhere in the United States of America right now. Because here is a man who understood this principle. But Martin Luther King Jr., he wasn't perfect. That means you're just like him. Okay, cool. Listen to what he said. It's a little longer, but I know you'll listen. I know you will. The ultimate weakness of violent retaliation is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Yeah. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie nor establish the truth. Right. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. So it goes. Returning evil for evil multiplies evil, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into friend. It's clear that what drove Martin Luther King Jr. was Jesus' teaching. I don't think we understand just how dark these times are in which we live. You say, oh, I understand. I don't think we get it yet. That's why we need a text like this more than ever before. Let's conclude by asking this question. Are you going to be around people this coming week that you're not going to agree with completely?
No.
If you live by yourself, you still won't be around somebody like that. You know? Is it your coworker? Is it your family member? Is it your sibling? Is it your spouse? My wife and I this week, we've not been getting along like we normally do. Sorry, babe, if you're watching. We just haven't been. It's like we've been living in two different worlds. We're stressed. It's hot and sticky. That always does. Hey, it makes things worse. I'm just going to be real with you. It does. It just had, my kids could tell you, though they wouldn't because they're perfect in every way. And they're under penalty of death if they talk to anybody about any of my sins. I'm not even. But we haven't been getting along as well. Have we been screaming and throwing things? Not at all, but we just haven't been. We've been bickering more. And you know what? This text is for me. I said this text is for me. Why? Because I said it to Amber a couple nights ago. I said, I'm becoming more and more like Jesus Christ as we work our way through Matthew 5. I'm telling you the truth, saints, it's changing me. It is just turning me inside out. Inside out. But I said, it seems like the more I change into like Jesus, it doesn't get any better here, is essentially what I said. I don't know why it's not really extending into my home life the way I want it to. It seems to be extending everywhere else, but my home life isn't quite as impacted like I want it to be. So, time out. That means that if you've been struggling with this, you're not the only one, because your pastor is too, okay? All right? Everything's okay. Everything's okay. There are no perfect couples, but I will say this. Let me just say this. This passage teaches me something about my relationship with my wife. It's those times when I feel like we're in completely different worlds that I have to break down the boundaries of my circle and say, I want to include you in the sunshine and the rain. I'm going to be good to you and do right for you, even if I feel like I've been slighted. Even if I feel like we're not communicating on the same wavelength. Come on, saints, I'm not the only one who feels like I've just had a period with my spouse, that we've just not been on the same wavelength. For some reason, we just aren't understanding each other, and it can get frustrating. And when that frustration starts to devolve into anger, which is what we're seeing all around us. All around us, we think, oh, they're rioting and looting. No, come on, the rioting and looting is what happens in our hearts every single day. You heard me? Is that when that frustration gets so pent up over such a long time that it's inevitably going to burst. Is it right? No, but is it inevitable? Of course. That's why Jesus said to avoid all the anger and all the hurt and all the destruction by allowing the rain and the sunshine to fall upon people with whom you disagree. By showing love, by rejecting retaliation, and by allowing the win to be greater than the loss. So, last sentence in my notes. Think of someone with whom you've been having a hard time getting along. What can you do to adopt this mindset of Jesus? What can you do for that person in order to live this out? How can you show sunshine and rain to somebody else this week who doesn't deserve it, who doesn't want it? How can you do it anyways? Let's try to see what happens. Because that's exactly what God wants to do through you.
Amen.
Lord, I love you and I thank you for the time we've had together in the Scriptures. Certainly have been a crazy, amazing journey through Matthew 5, and I hope that others perceive the same. Father, you've been changing me. You've been changing me. And I say it a million times. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just shocked by how, just by reading and meditating on your words, they have power. They have such power. They've entered into me, and they've given birth to something new. And Father, for those who are here or listening in some other way, my heart's desire, my prayer for this flock and for the community around me is that you would do the same in all of us and continue to do it in me. That your peace would rise like the dawn, that your love would shine through the darkness. Father, that's what our world needs. And I know it all starts with us. Lord, give us an awareness of this. You are the one. You are the one. You're the one who can make it all better. You are the answer. But Lord, you're not going to do it without us. So we ask that you would work through us and in us. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I read Richard Dawkins, atheist extraordinaire. He had a post on social media this week, and one of the governors, I believe it was, said, the answer to this problem in our nation is accepting Jesus. He put it pretty simply. But then Richard Dawkins got on social media and he goes, oh, the answer so far has been Jesus. Well, sorry, we didn't know. And so he went on to mock the concept of thoughts and prayers. The answer isn't just Jesus. What did Paul say the answer was? Christ in you. Jesus, for whatever reason, has chosen to use humans as a vessel to influence this world. And as long as we choose to not act like our leader, Jesus, then he can't be the answer. We're not letting him be. Does that make sense? Well, I can't wait till Jesus comes and brings in his kingdom. Dude, he did that 2,000 years ago. Right? He did. That's the end of that song. And earth and heaven be one. Because in us humans, that's where earth and heaven are one. In the kingdom, that's where. Let's stop mythifying and you know what I mean, making it mysterious and mythical. Heaven. Heaven just means skies. It means realm. It's a different place. All Jesus is saying is there's a kingdom not of this world that I'm trying to introduce into this world through my people. It all starts with us. So there it is, saints, the end of Matthew 5. What a trip, huh? Man. All right. So as of now, again, whatever you want to do, ain't no pressure. But I bought tons of burgers. I got turkey burgers. I got beef burgers. I got pretty much it. But I got hot dogs. I got cheese. We got buns. I have everything we need. We will not fall short. If we do fall short, we got tortilla shell. We got chicken. I'll make you a quesadilla. Quesadilla to some. All right. Anything I'm forgetting?